All right, we should be live and recording. Hope you guys are having a great day. I was going to take a sip of coffee, but I'm like, hey, let me not take a sip of coffee immediately right when I press record. But was thinking about what to talk about today with you guys, and wanted to just go over a few like really common questions that I get and just kind of like run through them. These are really pertinent to fat loss, weight loss, if you're somebody who, wants to change your body composition. And they're questions that I get all the time through just like questions from clients, questions from potential clients, questions through the DMs from random people, even in comment sections. So let's go ahead and just dive in. I'm not going to waste any time. So number one is, why am I not losing weight even though I'm eating healthy? This is a super, super great question because a lot of times when people try to lose weight, they will, try to change up their food choices or change up their food sources and, go from things like eating out more often to cooking more meals at home. They go from eating things like pizza to, like high protein pasta and just try to replace it with something like that that's kind of similar but a little bit lower in calories, higher in protein. Or they'll try to replace, their burger and fries with a salad and this and that. And like those are great starts and can be, really great starts. But when it comes to like fat loss or weight loss, at the end of the day, if we want to actually see our body fat percentage go down and see ourselves get leaner, we have to not only eat healthy mostly, but we need to be in a calorie deficit. We need to be eating less calories than what we burn. And eating quote unquote healthy doesn't always guarantee that necessarily, because you can throw together a salad and depending on what you're putting on it, maybe it's chicken and then you're putting maybe some like almonds or walnuts on it and then you're putting dressing on it and you're putting cheese and all this stuff. I mean, that salad could end up being 600-700 calories, whereas the meal you were replacing that salad with was maybe around 600 or 700 calories. So you can make healthy, quote unquote, foods, like whole foods that are more calorie dense, and it doesn't make those meals bad. It just means that you're getting basically the same amount of energy and calories in that meal than what you did before. So when your body processes that, digests it and absorbs it, there's not going to be that deficit of calories in versus calories out that we need for fat loss long term. Other like really healthy foods that are great for us that can be more like calorie dense though are things like olive oil. Olive oil has a lot of health benefits when it comes to like cholesterol, but too much of it can really make your calories pretty high for the day, which means it can tip you over that threshold of like being able to actually lose weight if you're having a lot of olive oil in your diet, whether it's, on bread or in salads or you're cooking with it. Something else, avocado. Avocado is a really healthy food, but because it is higher in fat, which has more calories per gram than protein and carbs, the calories tend to be pretty high for like a small portion size. You could have 100 calories worth of avocado and not even really notice it because it's, such a small portion versus 100 calories of watermelon. Like that's going to be huge. Other examples of this are things like I kind of mentioned, walnuts, almonds, things like that. Beans aren't super high in calorie, but they are relatively high in calorie just because of the fat content. Whenever you have a food that has a high fat content, even if it is a healthy fat, it's going to be a little bit higher in calories per gram than something else because dietary fat does have more calories per gram. And it doesn't mean we have to avoid fat or we need to cut it out. Like that's not what I'm saying. But eating healthy is just kind of a start to transitioning to like a direct fat loss phase and being able to control the amount of weight you're actually losing. But it's not a guarantee that just because, you're eating healthy that you're going to lose weight. Because you can eat, 2,000 calories worth of healthy food if you burn 2,000 calories and your weight's going to stay the same. Or you could eat, 2,500 calories worth of healthy food if you burn 2,500 calories per day and your weight's going to stay the same. So at the end of the day, we want to do both. We want to be eating healthy, but then we also want to be eating the appropriate amount so we're in a calorie deficit. And that's why like tracking calories or tracking your macros can be so helpful and beneficial because you can actually directly see like the numerical value behind what you're putting in your body and monitor and measure those things, and like make sure that you are in a calorie deficit theoretically. Like obviously, and a lot of people don't understand this either, is that like you can calculate your fat loss range of calories through a calculator, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be correct. That's a great starting point, but it's not going to like unlock this huge amount of progress, because our metabolisms are very adaptive sometimes, especially from individual to individual. So just because you calculated, okay, I'm in a 500 calorie deficit, doesn't mean you're actually ending up in a 500 calorie deficit, even if you are tracking accurately, because the calories out part of the equation, how many calories you're burning, can adapt and change based on variety of factors. So, but start there. You know, if you haven't tracked your food, you want to start with tracking your food and knowing, you know, where to go as far as your calorie range. And if you have no idea how to get started, like obviously, you know, you can reach out to me or Katie about that. But it makes your life so much more, it makes your fat loss journey more deliberate, more like scientific, almost like you're approaching it as, okay, like this is the inputs I'm putting in as far as how much I'm eating exactly, how many calories, how many grams of protein. I'm seeing how that changes my body over time, and then making the smart adjustment from there, versus just eating healthy is a very like vague approach, because you don't know. You know, like I said, you could be eating 1,500 calories worth of healthy food or 2,500 calories worth of healthy food and not even really know it if you're not paying attention to those higher level of details. So that's the biggest issue that I see with people who are eating healthy but not losing body fat, is that they're just still not eating the appropriate calorie level. And it could go one of two ways too. It could go, you're eating too many calories when you're eating healthy still. And it could go the opposite way, where maybe you're eating too few of calories when you're eating healthy. I know like a lot of clients have come to us like before they started coaching, and every time they go into like a fat loss phase or try to lose weight intentionally in their head, they don't necessarily call it a fat loss phase, but they eat so few of calories that it's just completely unsustainable, and then they binge eat and crash, and they're so tired, so sluggish, and they go to the opposite end of the spectrum, and they might not even be counting calories, but they overhaul their diet completely and replace all of their meals with like salads or just like a protein shake, and that's it. And they're eating or trying to eat like 1,000 calories a day. And yeah, I mean, you're going to see some short-term fat loss with that. Absolutely. Because, you know, you're eating so few of calories, but it's not going to be something you're going to be able to sustain. So that's another issue with just eating healthy, is that a lot of times you end up swinging the pendulum so far in the opposite direction, where you end up under eating too much for like the fat loss to be sustainable and to keep going. And there's a middle ground that you can find when you combine eating healthy with tracking your calories, to where you're eating the right amount to where you are fueling your body really well, you are getting enough of the nutrients you need, but also, you know, you are putting yourself in a modest calorie deficit most days. That way, like, you are losing body fat over time, and that's, you know, what we do with our clients. So next question, and sorry, it's a little cold in my office, so my nose is like wet. Which might sound weird because it's, you know, the summer, but when the air conditioner is on in here, because my office is in the basement, it gets pretty cold. So next question, should I focus on the scale or body measurements when it comes to measuring progress? So this is, love this question. I get this question a lot. And there are different views on this depending on who you talk to. My opinion is, I think body measurements are pretty unreliable most of the time. And I think the weight and the scale is a little bit better of a measurement to use in conjunction with some other things, which I'm going to talk about, not just the scale. But I think body measurements are just not that great. for a couple of reasons. So when we're talking about body measurements, let's say we're talking about like using a tape measure and measuring our midsection, measuring our thighs, measuring our arms, right? And I've seen like other coaches post client results at some points where they're talking about this person lost this many total inches in their body, and they have like 10 different measurement points and stuff like that. I'm not a fan of that because I think it perpetuates this idea that your body needs to be smaller to be in better shape or for progress to have occurred. But you can very well like change your body composition with maybe your thigh measurement not really changing. Because if you come into coaching or you go into a program or you start this change yourself, and let's say your thigh measurement is, I don't know, 24 inches, let's just say around, just throwing out a number. You could lose body fat and build some nice muscle in your thighs, and they could look so much different, and you could be so much stronger and be so much healthier, and that measurement still be 24 inches. And if you're so caught up in the actual tape measurement, especially of all of these different areas, which is kind of tedious to like have to measure your arms, your thighs, all that, then you're going to think, okay, well, I didn't make any progress because I didn't get smaller. And I think that's a bad message to send to people, is that like your body physically has to be smaller. So that's one kind of knock on the tape measure method. I also don't like the tape measure method because a lot of people do it too often too. They might do it every week, every couple of weeks. And if you are even like losing body fat and seeing your body get smaller, it's going to take a longer period of time to actually see a significant change in that measurement that's actually like real, versus you just accidentally measuring it differently and it being off. So like people just use the tape measure method probably too often. And I would say like maybe doing it every few months, is maybe beneficial if you want to try to use it, if like you're really set and I want to take measurements, but I wouldn't really do it any sooner than every few months probably, if I would do it, but I wouldn't really do it anyway. But third kind of thing with the tape measurements, which I kind of mentioned before, was like I just subtly hinted at it, is it's hard to be completely accurate every single time with it. So like you might have the tape measure just like in a slightly different spot as before, and it might make a difference of like a whole inch as far as what you're measuring. And if you're thinking about, okay, every month I'm maybe losing a quarter of an inch off my thighs, but every time I take the measurement, it could be off by a whole inch, then it kind of makes that measurement just not really useful because, okay, did I either gain or lose inches because of me actually gaining or losing inches, or was it because the tape measure was in a slightly different spot? So I just find it's too tedious. It's too hard to be accurate. And also it perpetuates that, okay, I have to be smaller mentality. Now, let's go into another way to measure progress as far as quote unquote measurements, which is body fat percentage scales. So this is a really common question I get as well, or I get sometimes potential clients or people online or even clients like bringing up their body fat percentages from these like scans they maybe get at the gym, or even like body weight scales that they buy that have some kind of body fat percentage calculator attached to them. And I hate to say this because those things feel really cool, right? It feels cool. Like I'm getting an inside look at what my body fat percentage is, how much muscle mass I have, but those things just truly aren't that accurate to actually take that number and think it's actually real, to be honest. I think like the in-body scans, last time I checked, I think the variation of error, I believe it could be anywhere up from like 4 to 12%. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that's the range, which is huge. Like if you're measuring your body fat percentage and it says, let's say 25%, and then you go in and measure it a month later, like, and it says 24%, and you're like, oh, I lost 1% of my body fat, but like realistically, because of the margin of error with those types of machines and how off they can be, you might actually be like as low as 20%, or maybe even like lower than that, or as high as like 28% or 30%. So there's a huge variation of how accurate they can actually be. And they can be heavily influenced by how much water weight you have on your frame. Like if something's measuring lean body mass and that's all it's measuring, especially if it's not really doing it in a completely accurate way. But let's just say it is. Even if it's measuring lean body mass, I could drink a gallon of water and gain 8 pounds of lean body mass right there, because water kind of technically counts as lean body mass in a lot of these types of scans and stuff. So these numbers just aren't really accurate. And I know it sounds cool to have like a actual number and then to try to like compare them every single month and be like, oh, I lost this much of body fat and I gained this amount of muscle mass. But they just really don't tell you that much, and they can fluctuate so much. And I've seen like clients show pictures of like what they've done in the past, and like their muscle mass has gone like it's gone like up 1 month, and then the next month it's gone down, and the next month up, the next month down. And is their muscle mass really changing? Like, are they really losing and gaining muscle like that much every single month? No, like that's not happening. And I think when those numbers are all fine and dandy and they're going in the direction you want, even if they're like in the back of your head, they're not accurate, it can paint like a positive picture. You're like, oh, like, my body composition is going the way I want based on these numbers. I feel good. And it's all fine and dandy when that's moving in the right direction. But when those numbers go in the opposite direction 1 month and you're doing everything right and you actually have seen good body composition change, but it's just because those machines just aren't that accurate, you're going to get down on yourself and be like, man, like I actually gained fat this month, or I lost muscle. Like, what's going on? You're going to stress about it. So I think like realizing just how inaccurate those things can be, and how, it might feel cool to be able to use those. They just honestly aren't that accurate, which is why like I don't think I've ever gotten one done. Maybe I wouldn't say never. I feel like maybe once I got one done, but you don't want to like put those on a pedestal or think that that's an accurate way to measure progress over time. So how do we measure progress over time? We can't use tape measurements, or maybe we shouldn't. We probably shouldn't use the in-body scans, or especially those like body weight scales you buy for your home. So what do we use? So there are 3 key things that we use with our clients that I think are the most effective and is really all you need to actually see if you're making progress. And that is the scale, not the end all be all, but using that as a tool to kind of get hints as far as where progress is going, how your clothes are fitting, and how you look in pictures or in the mirror. Now that's all body composition based. Obviously, like health based, how you feel, how winded you get, how long you can walk without getting tired. Can you, walk up the steps without having to hold on to a railing? Like those are all like non-scale victories when it comes to just getting in shape and being more advanced physically and everything. But in terms of just strictly measuring, am I losing body fat? Am I gaining muscle? Is my body composition changing? The scale, in conjunction with your progress pictures and how you feel like your clothes are fitting, like that will tell you all you need to know. Because now you're getting like subjective data of how you're feeling in your clothes. You're getting objective numerical data of what this weight in the scale is saying, and that's going to give you some hints as far as where things are heading. And then you're getting objective visual data with your progress pictures. And I think that's just so much more useful and valuable than these body fat percentage scanners that aren't really that accurate, and also like the tape measurements that a lot of times are not that accurate either. Because what you're ultimately chasing, like if body composition change is what you want, you're basically changing, or you're chasing a certain look. So to place like a body fat percentage scanner that, isn't that accurate, or tape measurements that a lot of times can't be that accurate, to place importance to those is kind of silly, because like it doesn't really matter what those numbers say. What matters is how you feel like you look in your skin, how you feel in your clothes. Like that's what matters. So those progress pictures and how you fit in your clothes, like those should matter so much more than these other arbitrary numbers. And the weight in the scale also should matter less than how your progress pictures look and how you fit in your clothes. But that is the more like your weight in the scale is going to be accurate. And that's why we use that versus using body fat percentage scanners or tape measurements. While the scale isn't the end all be all, and you could absolutely gain weight on the scale sometimes and see your body composition change the way you want, favorably, or you can see the weight in the scale not move and you're still feeling leaner. The scale weight, the measurement in of itself is still going to be accurate as long as like you have a good scale. If the batteries are dying in your scale or you're weighing yourself on like an uneven surface every day, then okay, those numbers might not be accurate. But if you are at least weighing yourself on the same scale on a flat surface and the scale works properly, it is going to be an accurate reading. So that's why we take that to just get some kind of numerical data, because that's going to be consistent and accurate each day. Is it the end all be all for knowing if you made progress or not? Absolutely not. But it's going to be better than those body fat scanners and tape measurements, because those measurements can be inaccurate, but the scale measurement is not going to be inaccurate. And we just have to remember that the scale is just measuring my total weight, how, the gravitational pull to the ground or to the earth. It's not measuring body fat. It's not measuring muscle mass. So that's why we need those pictures and that subjective data of how our clothes are fitting to kind of balance out the two. It's like a triangle, and then trying to take all of those clues and hints and find like that midpoint to find like where progress is actually going in the direction or is heading, in the moment. Next question. How much protein do I actually need to build muscle and lose fat? So I've kind of talked about this. I think there was a couple of episodes ago where I went a little bit more in depth with protein and how a lot of people, they base protein off of body weight, which is fine if you are like already pretty lean and in a normal body weight range, like the BMI category of normal. And like, I'm not a big BMI fan necessarily of saying, okay, you're in the overweight range, that means you're unhealthy and need to lose weight. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But those BMI categories do give you a good guide of like how to calculate your protein intake, honestly, of where it should be. So for example, if you find the like high end of the weight that would put you in the normal BMI range, or maybe even a little bit in the overweight range, that's probably a good number to use as your body weight with a lot of these like protein calculations, which most people will recommend between 0.8 and 1.0 grams per pound of body weight. And I think that's a really safe bet to go with if, like I said, your body weight is in maybe the normal BMI category or it's in the just slightly overweight category. I think those are good numbers to go by. But if you are like in the obese category or like extremely obese, morbidly obese, class 3, let's say you have, 50 plus pounds to lose, you probably don't want to use your body weight to calculate that. You probably want to either use your height, which I kind of mentioned 2 episodes ago of how I kind of do that with clients, or find out what your weight would be if you were maybe had a BMI of 26, so just over the normal weight range, or find what your BMI would be if you were in the normal range at, let's say, 24. And find what that body weight is and use that body weight to calculate your grams per pound of protein that you need. A lot of people will maybe even call this their ideal body weight or their goal body weight. I think that's fine too. If you have a goal of weighing this amount and you are 50 pounds overweight, or you have 80, 100 pounds to lose, something extreme, something higher up like that, you can use your goal body weight and calculate your protein intake. And that's going to be much better than using your current body weight, because your current body weight is going to account for like extra body fat you have on your frame, which you don't need extra protein for the extra body fat. You just need the protein for your lean body mass or your muscle mass that you have on your frame. And like I kind of mentioned, there are different like height categories that I kind of use with clients to get an idea of where their protein should be probably. And I find it's, super accurate to be able to do it that way. So like, for example, if you're between 5 foot and 5'3", between 100 and 130 grams of protein is probably going to be sufficient for you. Now, there are always exceptions depending on how much muscle you really have on your frame, but that's probably going to be a good starting ballpark range. If you are between 5'4" and 5'7", probably between 120 and 150 grams of protein is probably going to be pretty sufficient, somewhere in that range. If you are between 5'8" and 6 foot, probably somewhere between 140 and 170 grams is probably going to be sufficient. And then if you are, I don't know, let's say like between 6 foot and 6'4", probably somewhere between like 170 and maybe like 200 is probably going to be sufficient. And that is for women, by the way. Men is going to be a little bit different because they just carry around usually a little bit more muscle mass like per height than women do. Men, just literally off the top of my head, I probably would add to those recommendations probably about 30 to 40 grams on top of like those numbers I just went over. But next question then is, do I have to cut out carbs or sugar to lose weight? This client immediately came to my head. As I read this question, she's been working with me for just a few weeks now, and she came from a background of just always cutting out carbs and eating a really low carb diet whenever she wanted to or needed to lose weight or tried to lose weight. And now we've been working on breaking that belief and increasing her calories, for one, so she's fueling herself the right way, and also two, like allowing her to have carbs with each meal actually, and have carbs throughout the day. And she has felt so much better mentally and physically. The food noise regarding carbs has severely gone down, which was amazing to hear. But people just have this really big misconception around carbs and sugar and think that, okay, that is going to cause a lot of fat gain. And I think there's two reasons for this. One is there have been ideas or thoughts put out there in the internet of, okay, well, carbs raise insulin, and insulin makes us store more body fat. So more carbs equals more stored body fat. And that is just simply not true. Like, those mechanisms, when you actually like lay them out, don't line up necessarily in that way. And you know what else stimulates insulin? Protein does. Like, if you have a protein shake, a whey protein shake, that spikes insulin. So insulin is a storage hormone that kind of basically triggers or signals our body to store certain nutrients that we've eaten. But it's not necessarily just carbs. Like, it triggers the protein that we have from a protein shake to be stored and like transported into, our muscle for recovery and everything too. So insulin, carbohydrates have all gotten a bad rap from that. Another reason I think carbohydrates and sugar have gotten a bad rap is because of the foods that people associate carbs and sugar with. Like, if you were to say carbs, you would probably think of things like a big plate of pasta, or you would think of cookies, cake, ice cream, pie. But the thing is, the way people eat pasta, they're typically eating it with, like, one, a much bigger portion than what they need, but they're probably thinking about pasta that they made or they got from a restaurant that has a ton of oil that's cooked in there, a ton of butter, a bunch of like just creamy Alfredo sauce mixed together, probably some kind of, like, if they're having like chicken parmesan or something, like fried chicken in there. So the calories are really racking up from that pasta, from those other things. Now, if you take a pasta dish and you have like low calorie pasta sauce on it, and you don't cook it in butter or oil, and you just boil the pasta and you put grilled chicken in with it instead of the fried chicken, that's going to have a drastically different like calorie content, and it's going to make a drastically bigger or smaller difference on potentially gaining body fat than that other example I gave. When it comes to things like cookies, cakes, ice cream, yes, they are relatively high in carbs and sugar, but they're also very high in fat too. If you were to calculate the calories that you're actually getting from carbs or sugar and the calories that you're getting from the dietary fat in something like a chocolate chip cookie, the calories you're getting from dietary fat are probably equal to, if maybe not even more, than the calories that you're getting from the actual carbs in there. Same thing goes with things like pizza, cake, ice cream. So while the carbs are relatively high, these foods aren't actually high carb foods. If you actually like look at the grams of each that they have and categorize them, they are high calorie or high carb and high fat foods, high in both. And that combination actually is where a lot of these foods tend to be hyper palatable, which means that they taste really good and it's really easy to overeat them. They also a lot of times have a really nice texture, like to chew. Like think of it like a really soft chocolate chip cookie, like super easy to chew, melts in your mouth almost. Obviously ice cream, don't really have to chew ice cream. Those types of things are really easy to overconsume too. So people overconsume those things because they taste really good. They have this perfect combination of sugar and fat that makes things really taste good. They're high in both of those things. And we overeat those things and then we blame the sugar. But nobody's blaming like the dietary fat or the actual combination of those nutrients, because true high carb and high sugar foods are things like plain brown or white rice, plain oatmeal, plain potatoes, plain noodles, sugar, table sugar. Like nobody's going into the cabinets and grabbing table sugar and just eating that. So like these high carb and high sugar foods, if you immediately think of like pastries and cookies and things like that, or even pizza, those things aren't high carb foods actually. They are like high carb and high fat foods. And when you actually look at the high carb foods and categorize those correctly, you don't really find like in your even in your head, like you don't think, oh, like those aren't the foods that I think cause body fat gain. Like I know if I have plain boiled potatoes, I don't feel like that's making me causing me to gain body fat. I know if I eat a bunch of bananas, like that's not going to cause me to gain body fat. So the big misconception with this is people just miscategorizing things. And it's not even that carbs and fats together like have this unique fat gain property. They just have this unique, especially in those highly processed foods, this unique taste sensation where basically it just tastes really good and we want to eat more of those. And when you actually look at like the mechanism of how we store body fat and what nutrients tend to be stored as body fat, carbs actually aren't stored as body fat as readily as dietary fat is. Like the body fat that we are losing and gaining on a daily basis mostly is actually coming from the dietary fat that we eat. And our carbs are kind of used to fill up our liver to help to then be released to help maintain our blood sugar level, or those carbs get stored as glycogen in our muscles if we are lifting weights or working out. Our carbs aren't, if we are maintaining a healthy, active lifestyle, a lot of those carbs aren't actually being stored as direct body fat. Now, if we eat too many calories, then more dietary fat is going to be stored, as fat. But if we don't eat too many calories, then it's going to be a net balance of body fat over time. But and this isn't to pick on dietary fat because it's super important, super important for your hormones, super important for absorbing fat soluble vitamins. So don't think that, I need to cut out all dietary fat from this either. But just kind of playing, I don't even know if I would call it devil's advocate, but just pointing out the fact, if there's anything between fat and carbs of okay, which one is more likely to be stored as body fat? It actually is the dietary fat, which makes the whole keto thing just really interesting and funny to me, because you're essentially eating more of the actual nutrient that actually ends up getting stored as body fat. But long story short, carbs, sugar don't make us fat. And there's research around if you are eating a mostly whole food diet, so mostly fruits and vegetables, hitting your fiber goal, eating the proper amount of calories, whether or not your sugar intake is high or low really doesn't matter for really overall health and also fat loss too. The issue is nobody's really eating a high sugar diet while getting plenty of fruits and vegetables, hitting their fiber, eating lean meats. The people who are eating high sugar diets are people who aren't eating any vegetables really. They're way overeating calories because sugar is really easy to overeat. So they're not doing those things. But if you were to take two people and one person's having 100 grams of sugar, but they're hitting their fiber, fruits and vegetables, lean meat still, another person's having 30 grams of sugar and they're doing all those things, there's really not going to be any difference between their fat loss and their overall health either. So sugar also gets really demonized too, but it's not the impact of sugar itself that is harmful. It is the impact of eating too much sugar and not enough of these other things. And then also having too much sugar, which then leads to too many calories or more calories than what you need over time. And last question, can I really change my body without spending hours in the gym? So this is a really great question because I have a lot of people who ask me about, okay, do I really need a gym membership? Can I just do home workouts? What kind of workouts to do? So this really depends on where your starting point is and also what your goal is. If you are complete beginner and you haven't worked out ever or in years, and it's been decades since you worked out, let's say you're in your 40s, and let's say maybe you have like 70 pounds you want to lose and you can't even remember the last time you consistently worked out, you probably don't need to actually go to the gym. Like, you could get great workouts in at home doing body weight stuff, maybe even light dumbbells, maybe even not even dumbbells, but just getting like gallons of water, like buying a couple of $1 gallons of water from the store, which are, I believe a gallon of water is like 8 pounds, and you'll have 8 pounds each, and you can do like bicep curls with the gallons of water or hold them and do like goblet squats or something. So if you're like a complete beginner in that stage, you probably don't need a whole lot of equipment to like make a pretty drastic change in your body composition compared to your starting point. If you are more intermediate, you've been doing home workouts for a while, you have some visible muscle mass, and maybe you have like 15 to 20 pounds you want to lose, then maybe it would be beneficial to, like, if you're kind of stuck with like 20 or 30 pound dumbbells and that's all you've invested in, you might want to get some heavier dumbbells. I know Bowflex has some that a lot of our clients have gotten where they have adjustable dumbbells, and there's like one set that goes from 50 or from 5 to 50 pounds in like 5 pound increments. And then I think there's another set that goes from like 10 to 90 pounds in 5 pound increments. So if you're in that intermediate stage, you have like 15 to 20 pounds you want to lose, and you have been pretty consistently working out in some capacity, I don't know, for the past like 6 months at least, you probably want to at least have like somewhat heavy equipment, because you want to be able to, challenge yourself and get close to failure. And then if you are somebody who you've been working out for years, let's say you've been consistent with working out for, 2, 3, 4, 5+ years, and you have maybe 10 or 15 pounds you want to lose, and you already have a pretty good amount of muscle mass on your frame, but you just have some body fat covering up, you probably would prefer a gym membership. You probably want one, because the amount of like resistance you're going to be able to apply to yourself at home with limited equipment is going to be a little bit lower. And you're going to want to have things like a leg press to be able to really challenge your quads, or you're going to want things like different machines to really, be able to challenge your back muscles and do rows and lat pull downs and things like that. So if you're in that stage, you probably do want a gym membership to kind of get to that next level. It's like, think about it like different tiers, right? This bottom tier, when you're a beginner, you don't need a whole lot to get to that second tier. And then you kind of unlock this second tier, which is intermediate. And you don't need a whole lot or you need a little bit more to get to that advanced tier. And then once you're in that advanced tier and you're trying to really, maximize your body composition from there, you need a little bit more to reach that other level, right? Like, with new levels come new tools you need to, get there. Think about if you wanted to, let's say, you wanted to mow your lawn, or you wanted to improve the look of, your lawn. If you just wanted it to like look cut, you just have basic lawnmower. If you wanted it to look, a little bit more like a professional maybe did it, maybe you need to get like a weed whacker or maybe something else. And I'm not a professional lawnmower, by the way, so you could probably tell through my terminology. And then let's say you wanted your lawn to look the best in the neighborhood. There's probably more tools that you need at your disposal to do that. And that's kind of the same concept with like the workouts. And so it all depends on where you're starting. I think the biggest thing to keep in mind is, what are your goals? And do you actually know what's required to get to those goals too? And also, do you have enough weight to challenge yourself to get 1 or 2 reps away from failure in multiple exercises, like for each muscle group? Because if you only have enough weight to, like, you get to rep 15 or 20 and like you still could do 15 or 20 more reps of body weight squats, like you just probably need more weight to actually challenge your muscle the way it needs to be challenged to continue to like see the body composition change you want. Because we want each set to end at like 1 or 2 reps away from failure, and we want each set to probably be under 20 reps if it's for the purpose of like building muscle, shaping muscle, lifting weights. Anything more than that is just kind of turning into cardio. So if you don't have that, if you're not able to make things challenging enough to be 1 or 2 reps away from failure, at the end of your 15th or 20th rep at the most, then you just need more equipment. But also, like, know your goals too. Maybe you're someone who, like, you already have a lot of muscle mass on your frame and you actually are okay with losing some muscle because maybe you like were a bodybuilder or bikini competitor for, a couple of years, and you're like, I just want a more lifestyle approach. And if I lose a little bit of muscle, I'm okay with that, which I actually had a client this past year who was kind of in that boat. And, we dialed back a little bit on her lifting, which was great for her because then she was able to do other things like yoga and stuff like that. But if you're in that boat, then, you might need a little bit less equipment than what you like had in the past or what you would think. But if you're in the boat where like you really want a dramatic body composition change, especially if you're somebody who's already in that intermediate stage and you're past the beginner stage, the more equipment you have access to, the heavier weights you have access to, the better. And a lot of people will be like, well, like, I don't really care about building muscle. But from an expert's perspective, like my perspective of a coach, most people do actually need to gain more muscle to get the body they want. Like, they'll show me a picture of, okay, I want to look similar to this girl, and this girl has maybe like 15 pounds more of muscle on their frame than the client does. And I'm like, well, you might feel like you don't want to gain more muscle because like in your head you're thinking, okay, muscle means bulky, it means I'm going to be huge. But that's not the case. Muscle is what gives you that defined, sculpted look. And you're showing me this picture of this person who, like, I can tell has more muscle on their frame than you. So we actually do need to like prioritize really building muscle, which means like we need to make sure we have that much weight and equipment to just really challenge ourselves. So we have to like be clear of what our goal is, and then also just have the knowledge and expertise to know what it actually requires to get to that goal. But my last thing with this is don't underestimate, or actually not my last thing, but one other piece of this is don't underestimate the power of walking though. You can dramatically change your body composition, especially if you have a lot of weight to lose, from just walking more with no equipment. You would be so surprised at the level of transformation you can have going from like 5,000 steps per day to getting consistently 10, 12,000 steps per day. Like, that makes such a big impact on your fat loss, how many calories you're burning per day. I think just a rough stat is like most people who weigh, let's say 200 pounds will burn about 50 calories for every 1,000 steps they take. So if you go from 5,000 to 7,000, that's like 350 extra calories you're burning per day from going from 5 to 12,000, which is a huge impact, and coupled with like reducing your calorie intake by, a couple hundred, a few hundred. And now you're in this nice, roughly, 500 calorie deficit, losing about 1 pound on average per week. Like, one of the best things I've done for my current fat loss phase so far, and I've lost about like 16 pounds since mid-February. So as I'm recording this, it's been like 4 months. I've lost 16 pounds in 4 months, which is like a great pace of 1 pound on average per week. And I've had a couple of diet breaks in maintenance phases within this too. I haven't even been in this fat loss phase for the whole 16-week period. I like probably 3 or 4 days of the week, I really push my steps high at like try to now. I was trying 12,000, but now I'm actually pushing towards like 14 or 15,000 now that I got this nice standing desk and I can like do client check-ins while I walk. It's made a huge difference, but it's made my fat loss, so much easier over the past few months being able to do that. And so many of you who think that like you need all this fancy equipment when you are in that beginner stage, like, yes, we want enough weight to be able to challenge ourselves in exercise and get, 1 or 2 reps away from failure. But just getting up and moving and walking, especially if you're someone who has like 50, 60, 100 pounds to lose, will make such a dramatic difference. Like if you consistently get 12,000 steps per day and you're consistent with your nutrition, like you are going to, after a month, feel so much better. You're probably going to lose at least 4 to 5 pounds of actual fat, not just scale weight, but actual body fat, which is significant in a month's time, probably even more. So don't underestimate the power of walking or moving at all. Moving in general, like Peloton workouts, like circuit classes, all those types of things. I know I've talked multiple times about how they are not optimal for building muscle necessarily. But if it's the difference between you doing nothing and you doing that, I would much rather have you do that. And then kind of my like very last piece with this, and I know I've bounced around with this answer quite a bit here, but if you're somebody who's like so set on doing home workouts, but you have the capability of going to the gym, and it's not like crazy inconvenient for you, I would give it a shot, because I think there's a lot of benefits I've seen with clients when they do start going to the gym, which are a few. One is that they're able to just like get out of the house, not have to like worry about the laundry or the dishes and like trying to multitask and do those. And while that's great to like multitask and do both at the same time, and sometimes we have to, sometimes we got to do what we got to do, it's nice to have like a separation sometimes. Be like, okay, this is my 45 minutes or this is my hour to just focus on me and my physical body and feeling good and pushing myself. And the dishes are going to have to wait because I'm not at home. The laundry is going to have to wait because I'm not at home. Or, if your husband's staying home with the kids, like whatever they're dealing with, like I'll figure out when I get home, like it's so nice. And I've had so many clients tell me that they feel so good to be able to have their time back, especially moms, because, when you become a mom, you have kids, so often like you completely lose any kind of alone time you potentially have with yourself, especially if you're a stay-at-home mom or even you work from home. So I think there's a huge benefit there of being able to just like step outside of the house, do something for you, get inside of your own, head, put on your music, listen to a good podcast, and just like zone out a little bit while, pushing yourself, obviously, in the gym there. I think there's another benefit of going to the gym, which is obviously, the straightforward one. You have more weight to challenge yourself. If you don't want to continue to like invest in heavier weight for a home gym or for like some kind of home gym setup, then obviously going to a gym, it's going to give you more than enough weight that you probably need, so that's the obvious benefit. Third benefit of this is that when you go to the gym, you have a more a bigger variety of exercises to use too. So when you are working out at home, and let's say you have dumbbells, even if they are like heavy dumbbells and they go from like 5 to 50 or 10 to 90, and maybe you have a bench, you're still pretty limited in like the variety of exercises you can do. There are different types of squats you can do, different types of deadlifts you can do with the dumbbells, different types of split squats or lunges. But you're still kind of limited. Like you can't really do lat pull downs, right, at home with just dumbbells. You're just, for your back, all you have are different row variations. You can do like a single arm row, a double arm row. But that's kind of it. You're kind of limited as far as how you can work, your lats or your back. And clients who like always lift at home, sometimes they get a little bit tired of just so similar exercises all the time, where like if they had a leg extension to work their quads in a different way, or a leg press, or they had a different back machine to use, it would make training a little bit more exciting and have a little bit more variety. So I think there's a benefit of that, of just being able to like, and you should have the same exercises in your routine for 2 to 3 months at a time before changing them. So we don't want to be changing them every single week, every single day we go to the gym necessarily. But every few months, it is nice to kind of, focus on a different variation of an exercise and progress in that for a few months. And it's harder to do that when you're just limited in the total amount of exercises you can do because all you have are dumbbells and a bench. Now, if you don't get bored with them, then that's totally fine. Like, keep rolling with it. But if you find yourself getting bored of those same exercises or similar ones all the time, going to a gym at least maybe 1 or 2 days a week to kind of get some variety can be really helpful there. So that's it for today's questions. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you guys in the next one.